All right, so for our homework in MAT 100, I want us to practice finding the inverses for these harder functions. So let's do several of those, and you'll have several of these in your homework to work on. Find the inverse of f of x equals x minus 4 over 2x plus 1. Now let's remember our process of finding an inverse. And if you haven't watched the 150 videos, probably you want to look at those first, just to look at the easier ones first. But if we want to find the inverse of this fractional function, the first thing we're going to do is change our f of x into y. So I'll just copy and paste this part so I don't have to keep rewriting it. Second thing is we're going to switch our x's and y's. So our y becomes an x, and all of our x's become y's. So I'm going to just recopy that, and then I'll go right over here and change this x into a y, and change this x into a y. Now, our third step is to solve for y. And we've got a problem here of this ugly fraction on the right-hand side. So to get rid of fractions, what we want to do is multiply both sides by the denominator. So on this side, I'm going to multiply by 2y plus 1. But of course, what I do to one side, I've also got to do to the other side. So I'll multiply both sides by 2y plus 1. Now on the left, let's just distribute the x. So x times 2y is 2xy, and x times 1 is just x. On the right, though, 2y plus 1 that's in the denominator cancels with this 2y plus 1 right here, and I'm just left with y minus 4. All right, now this is usually where people get stuck. So let's remember that we're solving for y. So let's move all of our y terms to one side and all of our non-y terms to the other side. So I'll keep the 2xy on the left, but I'll move this y, and when I move it across the equal sign, it's going to become a minus y. And this x doesn't contain a y, so I'll move it to the left side. It's going to be a negative x, and I still have the minus 4 there. Okay, now, here's the tricky part of these. When we get to this point where we have two terms containing y, we can't add these together because 2x and the minus 1 that's there are not like terms. So what we're going to do is a trick. We're going to factor a greatest common factor of y out of this left-hand side. So if I factor y out of the first term, I'm left with 2x. And if I factor y out of the second term, I'm left with a minus 1. And then I still have negative x minus 4 on the right side. Now that we have the y factored out, we really have something multiplied times y, and we know to get rid of something being multiplied times our variable, we divide it out. So let's divide out the entire quantity 2x minus 1 on both sides. Well, and when I do that, oops, my actual function, my inverse function, is sitting on the right side now. Our 2x minus 1 will cancel out on the left, and we have y left on the left, but we want to change it in our final step to the f inverse notation. If it will let me. Let's see. Well, I keep hitting it, and it keeps not doing it. Let's see. Here we go. So there's our f inverse notation, and then this is our inverse function all over here, and there is our answer. So let's go now to a second example. Let's find the inverse of this fraction here, and we're going to do exactly the same steps all over again. So first, change the f of x to y, and I'll just copy and paste this. Then let's switch our x's and our y's. So our y will become an x, and both of our x's will become y's. So I will just change that x to y and change this x to y. Now let's multiply both sides of the equation by the denominator in order to start solving for y in step 3. So I'm going to multiply this side by the denominator, 5y plus 4. And of course, what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other side. Okay, so on the left side, let's distribute the x through the parentheses. We get 5xy, and then our x times our 4 is 4x. On the right side, though, our denominator cancels out with the thing that we multiplied by, and all we get is the y that's left on top. All right, now let's remember we're solving for y. So in our next step, let's get y's together on one side and non-y's on the other side. So I'm going to leave the 5xy where it is. When I move the y that's on the right across the equal sign, it becomes a minus y. And then the 4x doesn't contain a y, so I'm going to move it over to the right side, and it will become a negative 4x. Now for our trick. Let's remember, though, this minus y is really a minus 1y. All right, so on the left side, let's factor out a y. We get 5x, and we get a minus 1. And then our last step is to multiply out the stuff that's still there with y. Or no, I'm sorry, not multiply out. Divide out the stuff that's still there with y. So let's divide out our 5x minus 1 on both sides. So we'll divide out, if it will let me, 5x minus 1 on both sides. All right, now on the left side, our 5x minus 1s are both going to cancel, and we'll just be left with y. And since we're just really rewriting in this last step, let's go ahead and put it into the F inverse notation. So there's our inverse function notation, and then all of this right here is the answer to our inverse function. And there we have it.